What's up, everybody? Ron Harris here, online editor of MD, coming at you on a Friday because it's Friday. You ain't got no job, and you ain't got shh to do. That's right, for my Friday fans out there. So I'm going to take your questions. First, I want to start off with, if you guys haven't checked out the new MD Global Muscle, it was a great episode. It was Dennis James for the first half, and then Greg Valentino, I could forget, the Rambling Freak, second half. And Greg talked about something that it's very near and dear to me. And he talked about how he trained naturally for 23 years before he used steroids. Greg Valentino, who a lot of you know from the Discovery Channel documentary, The Man Whose Arms Exploded. You guys, he was known for those big freaky arms full of, he says it wasn't synthol, it was just all tons and tons and tons of steroids injected into his arms and shoulders, whatever the case may be. What most people don't know is that Greg was actually a very good natural bodybuilder for many years, 23 years he trained before he touched a drug. How many of you guys out there who have used steroids or who are using steroids now can say you went 23 years of natural training? I'm not saying he was 23 years old. I'm saying he had already been training 23 years when he first started using steroids. I thought I had gone a long time. For me, it was 13 years. 13 years of natural training. Granted, the first few years, I had no idea what I was doing. I still count all that. You ask a lot of guys, how long you've been training, and they'll just tell you, they'll give you the figure of when they feel they had everything right. They had everything put together as far as knowing exactly how to train, how to structure their body part splits, the exercises, mind-muscle connection. So they might have been lifting weights for 10, 15, 20 years, but they'll say, I've been training for 5 or 10 years. Anyway, that's beside the point. The point is, I want to encourage all of you who have not started using steroids yet, and those of you who are contemplating starting to use steroids, take some time and build a really good natural base of strength and size, because that's going to be permanent. You're never going to lose that. I can say most of the gains I made were natural. I certainly made much further gains once I introduced drugs, but anyone who had that really solid base, they can go off drugs and they're still going to look pretty damn good compared to the regular person in the gym. Whereas somebody who was on drugs from day one, built all their muscle with drugs, when they go off drugs, it's often like a balloon just having the air just deflated completely. Some of these people, they're monsters, and then you see them a couple years later after they've stopped training, stopped drugs, and they look like a swimmer. They look like they've never touched a weight in their lives. We even see some retired pros. Greg referenced a couple, and Tom Prince had major health problems, major. Kidney failure and all that. So I'm not picking on Tom Prince, but Tom Prince was one of the most massive human beings I ever saw in person. He used to walk around, I want to say he was like 5'8", couldn't have been much taller than that. He was about 300 pounds solid. I want to say he competed around 260, massive legs. When people talk about hamstrings, there's not too many guys that they reference as having awesome hamstrings, but you always hear Tom Prince's name. Tom Prince had the craziest hamstring drop, meaning it went out from the side. It just came out of nowhere like a crescent moon, and whoosh. So he was huge, thick, super strong. And now he doesn't train. He's obviously been off drugs for many years. And yes, he had major health problems with his kidneys. Greg said he's built like Lance Armstrong. And it's true. He's very, very thin. It's just strange to see that, because I used to see him back in the day when he was just so huge. Paul Dillette, another example. Paul was one of the most massive bodybuilders of the 90s, by far. Paul was, let's give him 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", something like that. He was definitely over 6 foot. Competed around 270, 280, something like that. Huge guy. Shoulders were some of the widest shoulders I've ever seen in my life, Paul Dillette. Just a massive guy. Arms were like 23 inches, legit. I saw them close up. They really were. And there was no synthol on those. He was just a freak. So Paul was massive, and now Paul, he's been away from bodybuilding. He hasn't trained for many years, as far as I know. He runs his own organization, WBFF, which is a rival to the FBB Pro League, so I'm not going to speak about it too much, but I'm just using him as an example of someone who now, to look at him, you would never, ever have suspected he was huge, much less one of the biggest bodybuilders of his era, which he was. And you're going to see some of this when you guys get back to the gyms. Some states are opening up their gyms. Other states, we're still waiting. I'm in Massachusetts. I know a lot of states are still waiting on gyms. We're not in phase 1 of the reopening because I think all states, at least in some of their counties, have begun reopening. Gyms are not on the priority list here. We're trying to get that ameliorated. The gyms are getting together and hiring lawyers, and we're contacting our governor, our senators, our representatives. We're trying to get the gyms open again because, if bars and restaurants and Walmarts and churches, and it just makes no sense. Gyms have this stigma because people sweat. And we now know the CDC said you're not catching coronavirus from somebody's sweat that was left on something. And that doesn't even matter because gyms everyone's going to have to clean up. Before they do their set, they'll spray everything down. After they do their set, they're going to spray everything down. And, gyms are much less risky than other places. I mean, you're going to get on an airplane right now and sit next to somebody, and that's safer than being 6 feet away from someone at the gym just because they're working out and they're breathing heavy. We'll probably have to take our temperature before we walk in. Man, I got off on a tangent. So what I was trying to say is you're going to see a lot of these people when the gyms do open up, say they haven't trained for 3 months, and a lot of people who rely on steroids, who used steroids from day one in their training, and they never ever learned how to train without them. They don't want to train naturally. They don't want to even bother training without them. So a lot of these people during the lockdown, unless they had some crazy kick-ass home gym, they're probably going to come back to the gym much smaller, and if they've been off the drugs, much smaller, dramatically so. Whereas someone who's drug-free, and if they did some kind of training, didn't even have to be hundreds of pounds on the deadlift, squat, and all that stuff. If they did some kind of resistance training, they probably retain most of their muscle mass. And it's because that muscle was built naturally. When you build natural muscle, that's yours to keep. When you add in steroids, other drugs, you're borrowing the muscle. You don't keep all the gains. You do keep some of the gains. I've heard people say that you lose all the gains from steroids when you stop using them. That is only true if you stop training, stop eating the way you've been eating. Most people, if they continue training as hard as they can and they cut back on the volume, take a little more rest, giving respect to the fact that they don't have that enhanced recovery ability, they're gonna keep most of their muscle. I'm sorry, if not most of what they gained. Say you carry 20 pounds more muscle on steroids than you do off, which for me it's much less than that. For me, it's like a 10-pound difference at this point. Also because I'm very, very moderate. I'm on just TRT most of the time with a tiny bit of DECA for my joints, like 200 milligrams a week of DECA. You'll keep about half of that, which is still pretty damn good because that's muscle you didn't have before. So that's it. I'm encouraging you guys to train naturally as long as you can, max out naturally, and that's going to take years. I'm not saying you have to wait until you've absolutely maxed out. That would be ideal. That's going to take 5 or 10 years for most people, minimum. You're not going to train for a year and make all the natural gains you can make for your whole life. I know people who continued making incremental, very small gains as natural bodybuilders, even 20, 25 years after they started training. Granted, not much. They weren't gaining much. I'm not saying they were gaining 10 pounds of muscle, 20 pounds of muscle, nothing like that. But they were still making small improvements, and that was theirs to keep. Wow, I'm not getting any questions, guys. So I did get a question on Instagram, just randomly. It was just on a comment on a video, a comment on a picture. Had nothing to do with the picture, but somebody wanted to know what's the difference between high protein diet and a high carb diet. So as bodybuilders, you should always be on a high protein diet, at least high relative to the normal person. I believe every bodybuilder should be on eating a minimum of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 180 pounds, if you're 200 pounds, that's 180 or 200 grams of protein you should be taking in every day, minimum, divided equally among your meals or feedings, whatever you want to call them. So if you're 200 pounds, you need 200 grams of protein. Math is not my forte. You would divide that up and try to split that among. I encourage people, if it's not a big deal, if it's not too inconvenient for their lifestyle, because there's a lot of cooking involved, 1.5 grams a day is probably ideal for most bodybuilders. And particularly if bodybuilders are using steroids, there does seem to be greater protein synthesis. More of the protein that they're eating, consuming, is getting utilized. So for a natural bodybuilder, you probably don't need more than 1 gram of protein per day, per pound of body weight, unless you're dieting, unless you take the carbs away. That's the difference. So your diet should always be, relative to the average person, high in protein. As far as the carbs, high carb diet, typically you wouldn't do that if you were trying to lose body fat. That might be something when you were trying to, I hate the word bulk. If you're trying to gain, if it was we don't even call it off season anymore now. A lot more people are calling it improvement season. I like that term, improvement season, because off season sounds like you're not even training, you're not doing anything. Improvement season sounds like you're working hard and you're trying to improve. So improvement season, you definitely would want to be taking in more calories, more carbohydrates, because that's when you're going to be growing. That's when you're trying to put on size and body weight. Whereas if you're on a cut, and here we are, it's heading toward the end of May, Memorial Day here, coming up Monday in the United States, which for us typically symbolizes the beginning of summer, even though technically summer won't start for another month on the calendar. But we consider Memorial Day weekend, that's the beginning of our summer. We consider our summer to be over Labor Day weekend, even though technically it goes for another month after that. I should know because my birthday is September 21st, the last day of summer. Summer goes all the way to September 21st. Did you know that? You probably didn't. So if you're trying to cut, if you're trying to lose body fat, that's when you want to reduce your carbohydrate intake to the bare minimum, just what you need. And I encourage people to structure their carb intake around their workouts. So if you're only going to get 2 carb meals a day, which if you're trying to lose serious body fat, if you're trying to get really lean, that's about all you want is 2 carb meals a day. Unless you're one of these people that has a super high metabolism and it burns right up. For most people, you're not going to need more than 2 carb meals a day. And that would be the pre-workout meal, the meal you eat before you train, and the meal you work out the meal you eat after you train. Pre and post-workout meals. You don't need carbs at every single meal, especially if you're trying to lose, it's not about weight, but let's say you're 200 pounds and you don't look really good until you're around 185. So you have about 15 pounds to lose. In a case like that, you probably don't need carb meal. You don't need carbs at every meal. If you do that, it's going to hold back your fat loss process. It's always going to be a balancing game, calories in versus calories out. How many calories you take in versus how many you expend. If you're taking in 4,000 calories a day and then your body's only utilizing 3,500 of those, you're in a caloric surplus. You're not going to be losing body fat in that situation. That's more of a gaining. That's more of an off-season, improvement season style of eating, or you might even go a little higher on the calories. But you want to limit your calories to just below maintenance level, and you consider, you take into consideration how many calories you need just to maintain your body weight every day without doing anything. Then you calculate how many calories you're burning with your weight training and your cardio. It's all just mathematical, plus minus, calories in, calories out. Well, I didn't get any questions, guys, so I wanted to keep these quick. So I guess that was just a little rant. If you want to leave some questions here in the comments, I will do another one of these videos next week, and I will answer those questions there. So we'll just consider this one a Friday dry run, a practice. Hope you guys all enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. If it's nice and sunny and hot, get out there, guys. Get out in the sunshine. Get out in the open air. Take a hike. Go to the beach. Hit the pool. Do something. Do something. Just get out of your house. We all need to get out of the house and get some fresh air. And even if we can't be right next to other humans, we need to be around other people. This is we got to get back to real life, not this ridiculous quarantine life. Thanks for watching, guys. Have an excellent weekend. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Hit the little bell there so you get notified when we do new videos. We got great new videos coming out, guys. Great new videos. Just trust me on that. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.